thanks. So for this session, how many of you guys attended our previous session, Android, or is this your first time? It's your first time. Okay. So I think in our previous sessions we were doing Android with Kotlin, and Kotlin is basically just to make Android applications natively. And in this session, we're going to be using something else called Flutter. So do you guys know what Flutter is, or have you ever heard of this? Can I get a yes or no in the chat box? Okay, one person has heard of Flutter before. Okay, two. Great. So Flutter is something that was developed by Google to make applications that run on multiple platforms. So unlike Android with Kotlin that just runs on Android application on Android devices, Flutter runs on both Android, iOS, web, as well as desktop applications. So I'll be showing you guys just like an introduction today. So like because we're doing the switch from Kotlin to Flutter, and for the upcoming Solution Challenge by Google that's going to happen next year, they have told us to use Flutter. So Flutter isn't very difficult, so we could go with it pretty fast. And so this is like the introduction session, and later on we'll just be starting with our prototype development, and we can discuss ideas for this solution challenge, and we can like finalize our projects. Everyone knows about the solution challenge, right? Okay, I'll just share my screen. 1 second. Okay, so I hope it's visible. In front of you there is this code lab. This is like the very introduction code lab to making an app in Flutter. And Flutter is like a framework, it's like a toolkit that provides us a lot of options to make applications. And inside Flutter we have our main language called Dart. And Dart, I have heard like people get intimidated by Dart, like they have to start a new programming language, but Dart isn't really that difficult. Dart is very similar to every single other like object-oriented programming language that you might have learned, like CPP or Java. So it all just like runs on like functions and objects. And in our case, and with Flutter, every like method is like built within a widget, and like the widgets have to update for every instance of the application. So if you guys, do you guys have access to this code lab? I think I shared it on the WhatsApp group. I'll share it once more on our chat. So you guys can like go along with this. I hope that everyone has like Android Studio installed on their systems. And first, like this code lab is just to like get introduced into like developing something with Flutter. Before actually making a Flutter application, we need to install Flutter. And installing Flutter is kind of a task. That's why the people at Google gave us this very nice step-by-step like flow to how to install Flutter inside of our systems. Wait 1 second, I'll just show that. Okay, in front, this is like the main page of Flutter, and here you can like know how to like install Flutter inside your your systems as well. And so if I'll show you get started, so here depending on what device you have, if you're using an Android or Apple or Linux PC, you could install it depending. And for making an application in Flutter, you don't even need Android Studio per se. You could use VS Code. You could use just normal like terminal, even though that's not that's not how it's that's not a very intuitive process. Mostly we'll just use Android Studio because it has like everything like in this interface available. Like it has the emulators, it has like the debugging, and everything. And you could use VS Code if you don't have Android Studio. And if you have neither, if you could use a site called Flutterflow, and Flutterflow is very powerful. It makes you can like run Flutter applications on the web itself. So as I said before, Flutter is not just for Android. You could make for web and desktop applications and even iOS. And so when you use the Flutterflow, you can type the code in Flutterflow itself. It's like an online IDE, and the application can run on the web itself. So like if you have an Android Windows device, then you'll just follow all these steps very carefully, because it could be a tedious task if you don't follow the steps. And to make sure everything is like properly run in your PC, we'll use this flutter doctor -v command. So that just makes sure that you actually have Flutter in your device. Okay, I'll also show you how how the packages work on Android Studio later on. So first you'll just go to this uh, app code lab. So starting with the Flutter like interface, everything is made out of widgets. So every part of the application is a different widget. And in Flutter we have this thing called widget trees. So maybe I have like, imagine like a tree, like if you guys know inheritance or anything. So everything is like a part of like a parent and then a child and then multiple children. So all these children are defined within the parent, and just like that it forms like a tree, like with branches. So every branch is like a different child, and like that it's very like easy to understand how the application works. So here we can choose our development target. So depending on which device you're building for, you could do that. It doesn't matter that if you're using like a Windows PC and you're making an iOS application, you can still make the Flutter app without needing to do it natively. So if you want like even higher like advanced features for iOS, then you might need you need to specifically like declare some code for iOS. But most of it happens in just one code base, and all of that code is written in one file, or you could make it separate files, but mostly just for small tasks we use one file, and that's our main.dart file. So just like that, you can see how powerful of a language Dart is. It's super powerful, it's super fast, and it just runs on every device very like efficiently. So okay, install Flutter. Okay, I'll share my Android Studio as well. Okay, so in Android Studio, here's one application I built some time ago. I'll just show around it. So this application was a camera app made in Flutter. And when you see the Flutter packages, you see like a lot of folders. We normally don't have to mess with any of these folders. The main folder that we write our code is in the lib folder, the library folder, and library, and then you'll see here main.dart. And so this is the main.dart file, and this is where your entire functions are declared for the entire app. And the same app will run on your iOS and your Android and your web devices as well. So when you're in Android Studio, you can see you can connect to your web or desktop. You can also open your emulator, or if you connect your phone via USB, you can even use your real device to run this exact code. And let me just show you how you make a new Flutter project. So you just go to File, New, and New Flutter project. Here it will ask for your SDK. So this SDK is what we have installed here. So if you're following with this code lab, you'll see this button, Install Flutter SDK. So those who don't have it already, you can just install it there. Okay. And so now that our SDK is declared there, we go next. We'll name this something, demo Flutter, and then create. You can keep the settings as it is. You can also give a description for your project. Let's go create. That's it. So while this loads, we'll see what's said next in this code lab. Mostly I recommend everyone to follow like code lab or official documents uh, made by Google themselves, because Android is a very like constantly updating tech, and when it's constantly updated, we need to make sure that we are using code that's not going to be broken in like next 2 or 3 weeks. We want our code to be as updated as possible. That's why always when you're taking code, like for if you need a dependency and that dependency, if you're referring it from some other site, it might be already broken by the time you use it. So you should always use like dependencies that are declared in the official documents, like the flutter.dev website, so that will have all the dependencies and packages you'll need. And speaking of dependencies, Flutter is mostly like if you want to add anything extra to your application, maybe you want to have a gallery app and the pictures are stored in your actual device's like path, and that path should be declared in your so alongside the main.dart file, we also have the pubspec.yaml, so it's right there, this one. And this is where you declare all the dependencies that are needed for the application. You also declare the name and the description of the application here. And this follows a very like strict indentation, so do not mess with it that much unless you need to add some extra dependencies, which are added here. So in this camera application I built, I have declared the camera dependency that gives access to the Flutter application to your actual device's camera, and then the path provider and path. So these two dependencies allow the actual image to be stored in the path of your Android device. So in Android devices, we have like the hierarchy that the soft device follows. Like first it's like the main drive, and then there's like folders, right? So like there's the DCMI, there's downloads, there are documents. So like similar to your desktop, the Android devices also follows this file management system. So this path is when you put it in your Flutter application as a dependency, this path gets defined inside your Android device, and that also is being it connects the application to that particular path. There's also other dependencies like the SDK version that we're using, and also like the Flutter and other dependencies that are used for design. Like later on, if you want to like have like different fonts or different images, like assets inside our project, we'll also be declaring them in the pubspec.yaml folder. So let's go back to this code lab. So here is that pubspec.yaml that I just showed, and that's where all the dependencies are stored. Here's an example one. They have some dependencies like English words, provider, and these other ones are basically, those will be just defined by default inside your Flutter project. That's the main.dart, where the Dart file is declared and where you do the most of the coding. And in this example, they have just few packages imported. So these import packages you can find in the official like flutter.dev website. When you want a particular package, you could do it, or when you're typing in Android Studio, it just automatically understands which package you need, and that gets updated in your Dart file. Okay, and this widget.build method, this is like the most like this is where most of the logic happens for the front end part. So unlike Android where we had Kotlin and XML separately, here it's the UI is built on states, and it doesn't require different state of like introduction. So everything is just built inside this method called the widget build method. Build is like where it is for widget, the build method is what being updated every time the app runs. So maybe you select a button, so when you're selecting the button, the state of that button changes, and then this method is again overrid. So like overrid means to like run again. So that's what this is doing here. In this we have like a tree kind of structure here. So you can see that this is the main parent, and here we have a child, the material app. the name of the app. So here they said title is namer app, and the theme, this is like the default theme, so this theme will run throughout your entire application. So once you declare it in this method, your theme remains constant and um, like monologuous. So you don't have to continuously like declare what theme you want. Unless you want a different theme in one of your pages, then again you will need an override function, and there you have to declare a new theme. So here we have some color scheme, and then here they have given deep orange, and then this is linking to another page, and this page is called home page. So here, so they have made another page, so that this was the main page, and not the main page but the main state of the application, and this is one of the pages of the application. So in this particular page called the home page, they have a scaffold. Okay, scaffold is like the tree, like where everything becomes in like a singular branch system. So in this scaffold they have the body that's declared in a column wise. So in our previous session we had like the different types of bodies, that was like row and column, so which ways you can declare your widgets inside of your application, so that there's multiple widgets. And so sorry, so these widgets has a particular orientation, and this orientation could be in column wise or row wise. And then we have children, and inside the children is where they're defining the different texts. Okay, let's go to the next one. So here they're adding a button to the app. So this is like this was the app so far, and they'll add one button. So let's see it. Okay, this is the function that they're using to define the button. It's called elevated button, and this is the action that will happen when the button is pressed. So on press, this is like an event listener, that if you know like web development, like we have event listeners. So this is waits for like the on press function to be triggered. That means like when you're actually pressing the button, this function is triggered, and it will print a statement called button pressed. So we can see that happen here in this video. Yeah, so that's like the button, and when they're pressing it, an output will come. Okay, it didn't come, but it's fine. Let's go to the next page. So this was their application so far, and now they'll be talking about like how to add like different UI elements to make the application look better, prettier. To make like UI of an application, there's like many things you could change. You could change the font, you could change the colors, you could change the backgrounds. So all of this is built onto how your app is being presented to your users. At the end of the day, as Android engineers, our main focus is our users. So if the users are not able to use our app, only if we know how our app functions, then that's not a good Android engineer. So we need to know our users the most, and that's where like beta testing and all comes in. So UI and UX plays a very important role onto how the users interact with your application, and building a good UI is always crucial to building a good application. So your application could be doing something very like intuitive, but without a good UI, nobody will actually use your application. They won't be even interested into knowing what your application is. Like when you're publishing your app in the future, maybe on like Play Store or App Store, nobody will actually like come to know your application if you don't have like that. You know, when you open Play Store, you have like the main page when you click on an app that tells you like the basic like brief details of info, and then has like few screenshots of the app. So if you see an ugly app in that few like in your first impression of that, then you're not going to install that app. You would think it's like a broken app and it won't do what you want to do. So UI is always very important thing to know. Okay, just like in Jetpack Compose with Kotlin, we had cards. Here also we have cards. So if you know Android development, you will easily know Flutter. as well. Everything is like basically the same. So in Jetpack Compose we had the tree type of structure, and in Flutter as well we have the tree type of structure. So as you can tell, like Jetpack Compose was kind of uh, inspired by Flutter. So even though Flutter is very new, it's like being the latest like innovation when it comes to Android development. It allows us to make applications all at the same time for different platforms. In like previously, in like more traditional ways, you'd have to build an application natively, and building the application natively means that so for example we have like is take for example YouTube. So like the people who made YouTube, they had to make YouTube how many times? Maybe 4 or 5 times. One for web, one for Android, one for iOS. Like the different like versions of YouTube that runs throughout, you would see it's different. Like maybe even Instagram is like this. So when you see like maybe your friends have the iOS version, like they have an Apple phone, you could see like some things are a little bit different in the iOS version than it is in the Android version, because these two things were built separately. One was built with Swift, which is what's used to make iOS apps like natively, and one was built with Android, Kotlin, which was used to build Android applications natively. That's why you can see like some differential like factors between the two applications. Okay, and coming back to this, they have the card element. So you could see here, there's like a card. It's like very similar to cards in web development as well. So I think here in the card you could add colors, padding, spacing, all the same things. Just like the syntax is different because it's Dart. But once you like take examples of already defined code in the documents, official docs, you can easily just use those code in your application. And that here they increase the font size. And for increasing the font size, they must have used the size element. Okay, it's fine. Okay, here they're defining something called final style, and final might be a new like word for you if you're coming from other tech backgrounds, but that's not in Flutter. But yeah, final is like some declaring like a keyword that's constant throughout, and it's not be changing all the time. So that's what final is. And here I think they call the final object. So this style is being inherited inside the card properties. So yeah. Oh yeah, and this is how they're adding like elements to it. So like semantics label period, if you see this dollar sign, that's like a variable, and that could change as per the input given by the user. So whenever this is added, that could be changed. So you can see this example. Okay, and here they're also this is like the size box, so that's increasing the size of this box. They have on press app state get next, so that's like calling out the next function. And here's text next, so that's for the button, the next button text. Okay, let's move on to the next one. This is a navigation rail. So because like when you have apps, your screen, the size of your screen could vary, as well as they don't have enough size. So like compared to a desktop, a phone screen size is very like smaller, right? It's so you the same elements that you see on the entire website can only be seen on the app version unless you change it to desktop mode or something. So navigation rail helps to make everything like for the Android version, make like you can see here the buttons that were we could have put it like differently for the desktop version can be all concise in the side. So that's a type of just navigation rails like helps for our app buttons to be more concise and easier to access when we're using a smaller screen like a phone or a tablet. Okay, and also when you're navigating, like using these buttons, we want to navigate to a new page. And so to add a new page, you saw in my this code, uh wait, yeah, to add a new page, we just add a new function, and that function could be connected to the previous function using the navigation method. So yeah, so all these pages that we're defining are always extended to the stateless widget function, and that was like the main build function of the widgets. So everything got connected there, so everything is a child of this stateless widget function. So all the pages belongs inside of that. Okay, so this code lab just went through like the brief of how an application is built in a Flutter type of mindset. And if we go to the official Flutter documentation, okay, this was to install Flutter. Okay, here. So if you like follow through all these code labs, you'll be very like understanding of how Flutter works. So we did the first ones for now, building your first Flutter app. Okay, your first Flutter app, and then there's like different types. It shows you how to build for the web as well. Like it has like one for animation. So if you want like even more animations than normal apps, you could just learn through that. And there's also adaptive apps in Flutter. So adaptive means how apps easily run on multiple platforms, so like Android, iOS, web. So this just teaches you how that is done very intuitively, and these are a bit extra on Flutter. So I recommend everyone to like go through like these first code labs whenever they're free. If you guys have exams, so maybe after exams as like a New Year's resolution, you could go through all of these code labs and become better at Flutter. And if you guys have any questions on how further on Flutter, you could like ask on WhatsApp, or you can even ask right now. Anyone has any questions? So I don't know how many of you have Flutter installed already, but I think the first step would be getting the Flutter SDK on your PC. So go from there, and after installing Flutter PC, you could try that your first Flutter app. Just try running that code, and if that runs perfectly fine, you could just customize it and make your own apps. And also, one very I was talking about this before. It's called Flutter Flow. Uh, yeah. Yes, question. Is learning Flutter easy or Kotlin? Okay, to as engineers, we need to learn what the market wants, right? But when you're a beginner, I recommend starting with with Kotlin first, because Kotlin is just like the it's like how everyone started as Kotlin. And once you know Kotlin, like learning Flutter will be much easier. And Flutter could be like intimidating at first because it does run on multiple platforms, and if you like for simpler purposes, uh just a simple Kotlin app would be nice to learn as a beginner. But knowing Flutter nowadays, like this that I'm showing you right now, this is called Flutter Flow. It's like it makes like Flutter prototypes very fast. Like, so you could have like a phone, and here you can even define what type of phone. So if you don't have Flutter installed, or if your computer is not able if you're not able to install Flutter, you could use Flutter Flow. And here you have drag and drop elements. Also, you can get like the code as well, so the Flutter code, and you could combine it. So I have like worked on multiple hackathons using Flutter. So if as a beginner point of view, knowing like having your fundamentals strong with Kotlin is good. But if you want to build prototypes faster and more impressively, then like if you're going for hackathons or projects, then Flutter would be better. And there's like barely any difference of learning in between Flutter and Kotlin. The main thing is not just to get confused between the two, and just know how everyone like of them works. Anyone has any other questions? Okay, I'll close the meeting. So if you guys have any other questions, just let me know on Instagram. Not Instagram, sorry, WhatsApp, and then we'll connect soon after our exams and everything. Any final thoughts? On Kanksa, you had asked me on WhatsApp, right? Something. Yeah. So the thing is, like, for right now is just to know like Flutter more. So just go through all those code labs and do it on your own pace. And once you're done with your own like all the code labs, you'll know how Flutter works, and it's much easier. Okay, somebody is not from Amity. How can I contact? I'll give my phone number. Send me a hi, and I'll add you to our group. Yeah. Anyone? Anything else? Okay. If not, then we'll be concluding now. So thank you for joining, and the next Flutter, like maybe I'll have one more Flutter session after like during like after this year. So next year, Jan, or maybe like the final week of December, we could have one more Flutter meeting, and we could like if you guys completed the code labs, we could go to the next steps, like discussing like each other's prototypes and maybe coming up with ideas and everything. Okay, so okay, goodbye everyone. Have a good luck for your exams.